Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. We are back and this time around it's going into the impact of climate change in Uganda. We've discussed climate change, we've discussed human activities, we've discussed all of those in the scope of safeguarding the environment for the future. Now, there was a time we were in school talking about the future generation. Now we are the future generation and still having human activities that are destroying it for the other future generation coming up. So in today's discussion, we are looking at maximizing donor funds in addressing climate change impacts in Uganda. And joining me on set this morning, we are pleasured and humbled to have Honorable Lawrence Songa, who is the Chairman, Parliamentary Forum for Climate Change. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think I forgot the other constituency that you come from.
Ora County in Zombo District in West Nile.
Okay. Honorable, thank you very much for making your time for us this morning.
Thank you.
It is very cold today and for someone to come through. So as we're heading into the topic of discussion here, I would want to know at least if you can break down for the viewers the Uganda National Climate Change Policy and the Act.
Thank you very much. First of all, my name is Bika Lawrence Songa, Member of Parliament for Ora County in Zombo District in West Nile. And in Parliament, I'm the chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Climate Change. This committee is new, I can say, because it was not in place. But as soon as we came to Parliament in 2016, we started working on a plan to have a committee in Parliament. Much as we had the Parliamentary Forum on Climate Change, it had no capacity to come on the floor of Parliament and push some of the climate change agenda. Okay. So we managed to achieve two things. We managed to get the Parliamentary Committee on Climate Change, which is now an independent, substantial committee to address climate change issues. The work is to also scrutinize all bills that are relating to climate change and also advise Parliament and government on the direction we should do as far as climate change is concerned. Okay. So we are checking on the responsiveness of the government of Uganda to addressing climate change, but also based on the promises that the government has made to the people of Uganda, but also to the international community through the convention, treaties, and the protocols. Okay. And so that was the first achievement. The second achievement was we managed to have, for the first time, the Climate Change Act. It was not there in place, and the problem was without the act, without the documents that are showing that we have prioritized climate change in the country, it would be difficult to lobby for support locally, regionally, or internationally to address climate change, because you will have no foundation, you will have no basis to argue when you have not prioritized it in your own country development plan. So we had to make this act to support the policy of 2007, okay. and so this has been reflected in the Vision 2040. It has been reflected in the NDP, the National Development Plan 3, and also we have developed what we call the Nationally Determined Contribution. This is the document showing the commitment of Ugandan government that we are going to cut down the greenhouse gases that are causing climate change by 22%. Oh. So we have already put the legal framework in place. What is remaining is just to work on the regulations for to support the Climate Change Act. And then from there we see how we can now move forward at the grassroots level where the impact is mostly felt. Okay,
I do believe you took part of people who went to the COP26 last year in Glasgow. And we would want to at least have an overview of one of the key discussions that happened as the world leaders gathered and climate change activists as well gathered in Glasgow. What are some of the resolutions you came up to, and what took our team to Glasgow?
Thank you very much. The COP26 took place in Glasgow, in Scotland. It was delayed because of the COVID pandemic, which affected the whole world. Yes. But finally, using standard operating procedures, the UK government managed to host this conference in Glasgow. There were a number of issues. Of course, the issues are segregated because we have the G77 and China, and then we have the LDCs, we have the Africa group, and also small island developing countries, but also we have the developed countries. Although climate change affects all, but the vulnerable communities, like people who are living in small island, people in the least developed countries that are mostly subsistent in their economy, it is very difficult to cope up with climate change. So for us, we are to go for these negotiations, especially number one is on climate financing, because we really need resources to address climate change in developing countries. And after we signed and ratified the Paris Agreement, which came into force actually earlier than expected, and all countries made commitments, developed countries made commitment to raise $100 billion to support the efforts to address climate change in developing countries, including Uganda. But this money, up to the time we went to Glasgow, has not been raised to the amount promised. But number two, getting that money from the Green Climate Fund, which is based in Seoul in South Korea, is also very difficult for informal society. Our society in rural areas of Uganda are not very formal, but this Green Climate Fund, the bureaucracy, the procedure, the requirements, they want formal things. So those are the areas of negotiations where we said, please make the access to that finance simpler for us, so that in the developing world we can be able to cope up with the impact of climate change. That was one key area. Of course, there were other negotiations like gender issues and climate change, and then issues to do with adaptation and issues to do with mitigation. Much of the money is going for mitigation. But for us here, we have prioritized adaptation. If you look at the NDCs in the world, I've read all of them. If you look at the NDCs, the nationally determined contribution in the world, you will see that 90% is talking about adaptation. And of the 90%, again, 90% is talking about renewable energy. So we need support in that area so that we as developing countries, as small island developing countries, as Africa group, we can be able to cope up with the impact of climate change.
Okay, and let's draw it back to Uganda's base now.
Yes.
I believe as a committee you've been addressing some of these factors to government, and you've as well been going on ground to at least sensitize the masses. How far have you gone with at least trying to take people have the action to address the matters of climate change, and how far is the journey?
First of all, we wanted, as a country, to have the legal framework. We have managed to work on all the legal requirements we needed. I told you we are just remaining with the regulations. Once that is done, we should be able to work within to implement our policy, the climate change policy. But of course, we look at this climate change is a cross-cutting issue. And from addressing the legal issues, we have now moved ahead to see that money to address climate change in the country must first of all come from our budget. We don't want the scenario where we expect money to address climate change in Uganda, maybe over 50% to come from from the development partners or donors. Our money to address climate change, the first money must come from our budget in Parliament. And then the supplementary support should now come from the donors. That's the only way we are going to really build our economy. But if we are expecting more donations than prioritizing in our budget, that is a challenge. So for us as a committee, we want to look at that now that we have the law, it should be supported with the budget. And then, of course, we shall continue with our oversight role to check that now that we have allocated this money to address climate change in the country, the donors have put money to address climate change in the country. We have to go on the ground to do a value for money field visit to check that is this worth the money given to Uganda. So basically those are the areas we are doing. But also as we go to the field, we listen to the people because we are representatives, and one of the key roles of a member of parliament is representation. So we go to the ground to listen to the people especially the challenges they are facing as far as climate change is concerned. If you go to Kasese, if you go to Bulisa, if you go to Molatar, Kyoga, if you go to Pakwach, you will see a lot of floodings taking place. There are a lot of floods in those areas because the Nile water has actually, the level has gone up, and the people are suffering. Some areas, the fishing communities have lost properties. They have lost houses along the river bank. So we listen to them and see how we can promote a local adaptation and how they are coping up with the situation they are in, but also they need to be supported. And we bring these issues out on the floor of Parliament to see how government can respond. After all, our key role is to check the responsiveness of the government of Uganda to helping people in Uganda cope up with the challenges of climate change.
I will stand for correction if at all I'm wrong. Because according to details here that I have, is that Uganda is ranked 166 out of 181 countries on the Notre Dame Global Adaptation Initiative for climate change. How can we do to increase our number? Because I feel if we are 166, we should at least go a lower bit to maybe among the top 100. Yeah, because why the Notre Dame index is showing that is because Uganda is one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to the impact of climate change. That's why we are ranked there. So we need to do a lot of adaptation. We need to adaptation strategies in place. Climate change was with us, and climate change is with us, and climate change will continue. But now what do? When climate change was with us at the beginning, the destruction to the environment was not to this degree we are seeing today. We are seeing deforestation, landslide, soil erosion, floods, and so on, wetlands degradation. At that time, at the beginning, it was not to that level. Then, while climate change is still with us, we need to adapt because the future will be worse because the destruction will be too much and population is also growing and people, most of our activities actually agro-based, and we need land, and we need land that can support agriculture. But they use, if you plant your crops and they are washed away, if you build your hospital, the next day the rain comes, it is washed away, and then maybe the bridges are washed away. What happens to the economy? So Uganda is very vulnerable. That's why we are talking about resilient infrastructure, not only in cities. We are talking about resilient infrastructure that can withstand the impact of climate change like floods. Even when they come, they should not be able to wash away our bridges. But that can only be done if we do a value for money work, if we avoid corruption, because if we do shoddy work, it will be washed away. And what will happen? Just imagine if Ginger Bridge is washed away. The new one or the old?
Both of them. If the two bridges are washed away, what happens? What will happen to the economy? I just want you to look at that.
The economic
mobility will be cut off. People cannot cross over.
Commodities.
Yes.
A lot.
So that's why we are saying climate change has a direct impact on the economy. If you want a healthy economy, address the challenges of the climate change.
Okay. Yeah. Now, you mentioned something to do with agriculture. I believe some agricultural activities have also had an impact on climate change or even on the environment.
Agriculture is both a cure, but also it can cause a negative impact to the environment.
How can
the technology we use is rudimentary, is too traditional, and now the impact is becoming more because our agricultural practices are not friendly. We don't have a lot of sustainable land management, especially for people who are living on marginal lands. These are areas of hillsides, maybe people are close to the river banks, and people are prone to environmental disasters or climate change disasters. These people are living on marginal lands and they are in less favored areas. Less favored areas because they had been under monoculture, the population is high, land is very small, and also there is a lot of environmental degradation. The ones still, some are living in semi-arid area. So these people are living in less favored areas, and yet they are doing subsistence agriculture with less support from government or subsidies or inputs from government. They tend to actually amplify the challenges of climate change because of our poor agricultural practices. Because you will see there is a land, what we call the land use, land cover change. If you look at the satellite maps in Uganda, before we had forests, now the forests are changing to urban centers, the forests are changing to settlements. So this is already a challenge. So agriculture, the method of agriculture is a challenge also to the issue of climate change. Okay. But what we need to do is to help our farmers, especially the 39, the smallholder farmers, to do sustainable agriculture, to do sustainable land management, to do appropriate method of farming. People are living on hillside should be able to do some terracing, some contours, so that it can control the erosion. But also on the top of the mountain, we need to have some forests so that we can prevent the landslides and so on, especially in heavy rain areas like the Mount Elgon area. But also, if you look at the coffee farmers, if you look at some of the latest studies that were done in that area, you will see that coffee needs a certain temperature where it can do well. Now, as the climate change continues to increase the global temperature, people are growing, coffee growing areas, the people who are growing coffee will continue to move to look for that temperature towards the top of the mountain. Time will come after some years when they will reach the top of the mountain. What will happen to coffee industry in Uganda? So, and not many people will manage to grow coffee in greenhouses. So we really need to help our farmers and do sustainable land management. We need to do appropriate method of farming, but also we need to address post-harvest losses. We lose a lot of, if someone is harvesting millet in Nuoya, you will see a lot of losses right from the garden up to the storage. So we need to address post-harvest losses so that agriculture can help us. We can have production, we can have food security. Food security means we have food for market, food for emergency, and food for home use. If you don't have food for all the three factors, you don't have food. We don't have food security. And food for market means food for industry. Now Uganda is talking about agro-industrialization under parish development model. If there are no raw materials, how are you going to have this agro-based industry? So we need to double production in agriculture through addressing the factors I've talked about, but also doing a lot of irrigation, because what is making people not to grow crop, one of them is lack of water. Drought is affecting our economy, but also we need water for irrigation so that farmers can double production in agriculture. We have food security, we have food for market, and for our agro-based industries, which we have put under the parish model. Minus that, we shall have no raw material.
Honorable, let's also talk about the government.
Yes.
Now, school setting, the government is me, you, and everybody.
Yeah.
But in reality, Cheka, we would think the government are the MPs, the people in the top officers from cabinet.
Yes.
When you look at the funding that has come through to address
Uganda.
climate change, let's first start it from home.
Yeah.
How far has the government gone to at least facilitate, one, the committee, two, facilitate the cause, and also how much funds does the government input in the issue of addressing climate change?
First of all, this year we have a budget of 48.1 trillion.
With the coming financial year?
Yes, okay. 48.1 trillion. Out of 48.1 trillion, because of overborrowing and issues to do with salaries and wages of people, what we call the recurrent, actually what is available is about 18 trillion. Out of 48, the rest is going to pay our loans,
debt servicing,
yes, and then the recurrent
salaries and all that.
Now, out of the 18, again, prioritized, there are factors that you must address in any country. One is the issue of peace and security. Another one is the issue of energy access, which should be strong, low cost, or cheap and reliable for the population if they are to develop. If they are to live cutting charcoal, trees for charcoal, we must give them strong, reliable, and cheap energy. So for us, first we need energy access to the population, and then at the same time we need the cost to be low so that they can do productive, they can do some value addition, so that they will look at agriculture. If they do some value addition, maybe bananas and so on, they will look at agriculture as helping them, and then they will not go for charcoal and firewood. Another factor is the issue of transport. If you don't have a good transport system, you cannot still address the challenges facing the economy. Because farmers, these smallholder farmers, they produce, but they want to sell either at farm gate or they can go to distant market. There is no way you are going to move to distant market if the roads are terrible, like the ones in Zombo. There's no way, and it's a very productive place, but farmers cannot move up to the market. Business people from Kampala who are able to give better price for the people in Zombo or West Nile, they cannot go there because the hired vehicles they have gone with will get stuck in the bad road. So we need to address the issue of transport so that farmers can either sell at farm gate or in distant market. But at farm gate also, if you need value addition, you need electricity. So that's why energy is linked to the economy. And then the third one is the issue of industrialization, which I've already talked about. Uganda is talking about agro-industrialization. Double production in agriculture, have energy access, linked to market through the transport system, so that your industries with the high production of raw materials can thrive, and that will create employment for the people. Once people are employed in industries, they will not go to cut trees and charcoal. So these are the things we need to address. These are key factors. So out of the 18 trillion, we need to address issue of peace and security, and we are taking about 6 trillion is going for peace and security, and then we remain with 12, and we want, if possible, because the parish model is a good thing, if only we can sensitize the committee, build their capacity to manage this money properly to address the challenges in a parish, which is actually a smaller unit. So if we can give like 2 trillion to address the parish model, and then we shall remain with 10 for all sectors of the economy. That 10 trillion is not enough. That's why we are calling for donors to come in to fill the gaps. That's why projects have to come, programs have to be created, supported by the donors, because this time we have not managed to raise a lot of money because of this COVID. People think, there are some people in Uganda or somewhere who think that when it comes to budget time, there is a money in a box. And then when it comes to around June there, or May towards June, the government opens that box and removes the money and then brings to Parliament. Now you can divide for the population. It is not like that. The money we are having in this budget must be raised from market dues, from all sorts of things in the country. That's why you see, you have to raise your money for the budget. There is no money kept in a box somewhere which is supposed to be distributed when it is come to budget time. So this is the perception, people. This is the misconception that needs to be corrected in the minds of people. We have to raise the money. Now, we were not able to raise enough money because of COVID. Yes. Why? Businesses have closed. Nobody is paying market dues. There's no business. So this is something we need to understand. And if you want to build a house like this, there are only two options. You either save the money over the years, which can take you even 10 years to build a house like this, or you go to the bank, you go to a money lender, or you go to a bank. If you go to the bank, you can build this house in 3 months, but that house is not yours until you have paid the loan. Or you save the money from your small savings, and then after some years you will build the house. It may take you 10 years, but after 10 years, if you have finished that house, that is your house. Nobody will take it away. Even government works that way. Okay. You either go for loan or you save. And one thing, or you sell what you have so that you can generate that money than going for loan. Because no country is supposed to borrow 50% of the GDP. All right. But now we have borrowed a lot of money because of two things. There are pressures, there are tarmac this road, do this, and then we have to borrow. So we must borrow, but we must borrow for, if possible, we must borrow and put our money for things that can generate more revenue than consumption. Okay. That is really very important. Now, another thing is...
as we're heading into a break, Honorable.
All right. Yeah, so if you have your money in the budget, it must be well managed, and it should be put for income generating activities than putting it for consumption, buying vehicles, upgrading computers. For what?
Okay.
Let us put it for income generating activities.
I do believe you're enjoying the discussion that we are having. Honorable Songa Lawrence is also a businessman, I've been told. He told me here, before we actually went on air, he's a businessman, an active business person. So after the break, we're going deeper into the maximizing donor funds in addressing climate change. How far have we been using the donor funds? Have we put them into good use? So before we actually go into a break, the local government minister, Raphael Majezi, cautioned local leaders against misuse funds to achieve targeted climate change challenges. Which funds? There's a 40 billion fund that was funded by the European Union and Belgium, and is set to be implemented in pilot districts of Kasese, Zombo, Noya, and Nebi. So those are some of the discussions we're going to have after the break. Like I said, you cannot fake this up. Good morning. Keep it up. We're getting back with our next quick 15 as we discuss more from climate change.
Thank you.